What's that?
Other duties as assigned.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, yes.
They did. Did they? I think so.
So you can hear the delay?
Who else is here? Who's in the building?
Let's see. Bonnie's here, Jan is here, Sean is here, Carol's here, I am here, and Mary Beth. And out in the audience, we have Jesse and someone I don't know. Matt.
Oh, hi, Adam.
Also, we have several people phoning into this via Zoom, so we will address their concerns also. But Madam Chair, we currently have a quorum and we are streaming and doing all of that.
All right, let's get this going. I would like to formally bring our meeting to order. It is 6:03. It is March 28th. This is the Town of Loomis Land Use Committee meeting. We are meeting here at the train depot. We do have several members of the public here, and we also have our other committee members that are not here on Zoom. You have the ability to access the meeting by going on to our agenda that's posted on the website, and you can access the meeting via Zoom that way. All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chairperson Jan Clark-Kretz.
Here.
Bonnie London.
Here.
Jean Wilson.
Here.
Randy Elder. And I see that Tim Underko is here, but
Here.
Tim, okay. And that's what we got. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Now we're going to go to committee comment for items not on the agenda. Is there any committee comment for items not on the agenda?
Jean has a comment.
Go ahead, Jean.
For those of you that didn't know or have forgotten, on March 31st, that's this week, there's the CARES meeting, which is something that Russ Kelly put together with a number of with organizations. And so there will be kind of a family town get together for anybody that wants to come, and booths by various organizations and nonprofits around town, and everyone is invited. That's 4 to 7 at Memorial Hall. And the other thing I wanted to mention, it will not affect this committee because we're wrapped up on land use, but something came up this week with on Tuesday night, the Planning Commission, and I think it's quite possible that some of the properties along Grace Road and Betty and Martin Lanes may be wanting to get together and request a land use request to move from the tourist commercial back to their original rural residential kind of designation. So that we won't have to deal with that. The Planning Commission will get it, but I just thought that since this is the overall land use committee, you might be interested to know that it's an area that I've been concerned about for quite a few months, thinking of people there might be interested in doing that, but I didn't know anybody and was told that's not something the town goes out and asks about. So we'll see what happens with that. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Jean.
Madam Chair, if I could segue into Jean's topic.
Please.
Not the CARES, but the land use change request that the town has received. So just to kind of let everybody know, we have several people in the audience Tonight's meeting is for the Land Use Committee and their continued review and recommendation of goals, policies, objectives, and implementation measures, which will be provided to the Planning Commission on the current general plan update. As Jean mentioned, as a result of last week's Planning Commission meeting, the town has received several requests for land use designation changes, whether it's CC to RA or whatever. But this Land Use Committee reviewed and confirmed their land use change requests at their meeting of February 23rd. As a result of their completion of that matter, that topic, any additional land use change requests received after February 23rd will be forwarded to the Planning Commission for consideration. So even though this committee is done with that, we're still accepting those requests. You can send them, hand deliver them, email them, however you want to get them to Town Hall. We would encourage you to do that at least by the end of April, as we're looking at hopefully presenting the land use, the complete general plan draft for consideration review, beginning review in May at some point. So be assured any requests received will proceed to the Planning Commission. They just won't be heard by this particular committee.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
And I think just a reminder too, that those recommendations that have been made that are going to go forward to the Planning Commission, they will also go out to community residents in the form of a survey.
Yes.
Okay.
At the direction of the committee. That was one thing real specific for the committee, is to get those out there and do a survey town-wide, not just area specific, and bolster that input coming in as it goes forward to the Planning Commission.
Will that only be the things that we talked about, or will it include any that you have coming in, such as Brace or any others that come in by some time when the survey goes out?
It will include all of the committee recommendations plus any received after February 23rd.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other committee questions for items not on the agenda? And how about public comment for items not on the agenda? I see we have a couple people in the audience, and if you are here for the area that we were just speaking about, now is the time for you to address the podium. Are you going to do public comment? If you were planning on bringing public comment to our meeting tonight, then now would be the time to address.
And that would be for any matters not on this specific agenda for the Land Use Committee. No, not on this agenda. Those will come forward at the Planning Commission level. This is more of an advisory ad hoc committee reviewing the draft general plan and making changes and recommendations to the Planning Commission.
It's about the CT.
Yes.
I want to bring up a couple of points.
Sure, come on up. Now's a good time.
My phone isn't working in here, so if this is pertinent.
And you would just need to state your name, and you don't really need to put your address, but go ahead if you want to.
My name is Susan Piette.
Can you hear everybody?
My name is Susan Piette. P as in pepper, I-E-T-T-E. So I just wanted to bring up the Loomis Municipal Codes 13.26.070, the CT Commercial Tourism District Standards, Section B3, that states that primary access to commercial development from Horseshoe Bar Road is what it states, with limited secondary access on Brace Road. Is this what we're discussing? Is this proper?
things that I can talk about?
This would be more specific to the RV park and not the goals,
This is about the
policies.
rezoning.
Yeah, so that's not what's on tonight's
We're not doing
agenda.
rezoning.
Correct. That's what'll come forward to the planning commission, probably in May.
Okay, it's not RV, but it's rezoning, so it's like a separate thing.
Right, land use change.
Land use. So
Yeah.
this is not the time to do this.
Correct.
So, yeah, but please feel free to give
Yeah.
public comment if you want.
That's what I was gonna say.
So why don't we stop, because you only usually get a certain number of minutes, but I don't want to count that right now because I know you're confused.
I'm very confused.
So basically what's happened tonight is we are the land use meeting for the general plan update. And so people that have asked for land use changes, changing from one zone to another, from one, right, those requests have already been talked about with our committee meeting, and those will be going to the planning commission. So if your public comment has anything to do with possibly changing your land use designation on your parcel, then that will go to the planning commission, where you will have another time to give public comment. So it's right.
And if you haven't, or you know somebody that has not submitted a specific request for their property, we would like to receive those by the end of April so that they can proceed forward with the planning commission. At some point, those are going to have to be cut off, and not just specific to your area, but throughout town, so that the planning commission can craft or so that staff can craft the EIR that will accompany the general plan document as it proceeds through the planning commission.
So end of April, is there a date? April, received by April.
April 30th.
And if you have any other questions too, feel free to call town hall and talk to Mary Beth as the planning coordinator. She can help you with any questions that you have, and help you organize and help you understand, your own land use zoning or designations that you have. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for coming out tonight. And it's really storming. I'm sorry about that. Anybody else have any public comment?
Cheryl Benson, you may unmute.
Okay, thank you. The reason for attending this meeting was public comment. And I want to tell you, thank you very much for your information you just provided. It's very, very helpful. And that's really all I have to say. That was very, very informative.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Any other public comment for items not on the agenda tonight? All right. Hearing and seeing none.
I have a question though. Is there a way that the town can send information out to the community about that deadline? Because I think that's really important that they know they only have until April 30th to get their land use requests in.
Consider it so.
All right, now we are going to set aside a time to adopt our agenda for this evening.
I move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jean. Can we have roll call, please?
Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jean Wilson,
Yes.
Jan Clarkett,
Yes.
Tim Underko,
Yes.
and Randy Elder.
Randy, can you indicate your vote?
It looks like there's something going on with his internet connection.
Yes,
Yeah, he
might
pixelated.
be from the storm.
Randy, how about a thumbs up for approval?
High up. It looks like
High
we're-
up.
Lost his video.
It's probably that storm cell going through. Hi, Randy, we can hear you. I think.
we can hold off on his vote, and as soon as he becomes visible, he
He
can just
gets
tell me what
back.
his vote
Okay.
was,
Okay.
and I can put it in there.
All
That
right.
works.
All right, now we're going to move to public comment on consent agenda. Does anybody have any public comment, either in our committee or in the public, for comments on our consent agenda?
Anybody out on Zoom, please raise your hand. Seeing none.
Okay, then now can we,
I move to approve the consent agenda.
thank you. Is there a second?
A second. Jean,
Okay, thank you, Jean. Roll call, please.
Yes, Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jean Wilson,
yes.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Tim Underko,
Yes.
and Randy Elder.
I'm here.
Oh,
Thanks.
great. And did you vote yes on the last item too, Randy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now we're going to go right into committee matters and pass it over to Mary Beth.
Yes. First off, welcome everybody to our Land Use Committee meeting. Tonight's agenda, we're going to continue the review where we left off on the 15th of March. And we are beginning with the land use goals, policies, implementation measures, beginning on LU 9. And for those of you not familiar, Mark Teague with Placeworks is our staff consultant on this portion of the project. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Let me figure out how to convince Zoom to do what I want it to do, which is seeming to be more of a challenge lately. All right, there we go. As we mentioned, this is where we left off at, you can hear me, right? You can all hear me? I hope so.
Yes.
We can hear you, but could you increase the size?
The font size.
The font size on the document, Mark, it's
Yes.
unreadable.
That's
That's
about as
getting
big as,
better.
if it gets any bigger than that, I can't read it here in the office.
Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. This is where we let off. One of the things that was asked of the committee last time was provide a little more context for some of the policies. So that has been added. And as before, if there is italics, blue italic text is added. If it's underlined, it's new. And if it's double strikeout in red, it's being recommended for elimination. So here we are. This is encourage development of commercial uses north of I-80 and in the proximity of Horseshoe Bar Road. And here's the policy for that particular objective.
Could you guys zoom it out a little bit? It's sorry.
Zoom out.
Zoom out. Yeah, it looks pretty big on my.
Oh,
That's a little better.
no, I
No?
can't.
You and Andy ought to have a thumb fight or something, Tim, because he
Now
just,
it's too little. It's too little now.
All right. Well, go back to normal.
Just
Sorry.
Mark, if you hide the formatting, can you hide the formatting on the edge, or the track changes on the side,
Yeah.
I
on
can
the
show
right hand side? Hide
you
that.
that all if you like. But we have the comments. Do you want the comments there or no? Okay, well, that doesn't make it any larger.
Made it cleaner.
Fair enough.
I think so. It is easier to read, Mark.
Yeah, the only difficulty is that the track changes version. Now we don't get the changes, but that's fine. I mean, whatever makes
If we need to, we can discuss where the track changes have occurred, Mark. But right now, this is easier to read.
fair enough.
What does track changes mean?
So let me show you. This is where we've made changes.
Okay,
So the document keeps track of the changes. And when I do this, it hides them all. And I can also just go over here and click, but it hides them all. And so all we're left is the comments and stuff that isn't in track changes. So this would be manually listed as overlaid.
So we would have to have the old copy in front of us now to know what's being
Most of
eliminated.
with this is a little bit of an outlier because usually we don't do this in track changes per our policy. I think this is the only thing in here like that.
Okay, that's the old, from the old general plan, the
Yes,
specifics for the area behind Rayleigh's.
that's correct.
Can you take, or is it my computer? I have the pictures of people on the side. Is that me to take that off?
Yes.
Okay.
So Jean, I believe in the upper right corner,
Yeah,
you'll
yes,
see a button that says View.
yes, click that.
Yeah, click that and then you'll get another drop-down menu.
I could do standard side by side speaker gallery, swap video and or end full
So
screen.
if you go standard, it should eliminate everybody. If you go side by side speaker, you'll get a box with the speaker who's talking that pops up. And if you do gallery, you see everybody.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have the room, but at least now I can read the comments on the side.
Good.
And those to me look fine for that objective.
Okay.
All right, committee members, if you see anything that you have a question about, please just ask. Don't wait. Bonnie has a question.
Because we're talking, for that one area, we're talking about the section that runs up Horseshoe Bar Road, essentially to Taylor, is that correct?
Correct.
So do we want to mention anything about the library and it being an area of civic gathering or anything like that, a park?
I think we do talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
I think that's a separate policy.
Yeah, one of the things we looked at and that came out of the last meeting is the objectives we're going through right now deal with specific places where later on it talks about these are things we want to occur in the town, but it doesn't say it has to occur at a specific location. So there's an objective that deals with those. So these are very much site specific, and in this case, the area along Horseshoe Bar Road from Interstate 80 up to Taylor Road.
Yeah, when we get to policy 11.1.3, we talk about a community center in the vicinity of the library.
And then I spoke with Christy today too, just to let our team know, our committee know, these are not in the correct, it's not in the right order. So then as soon as we're done, she will be going back through and putting things in the right order and renumbering everything. So it'll make a lot more sense after we get through the text.
Yep.
So for this whole kind of section here, part of this has to, the objective has to do with the tourist commercial. And then some of this does not belong here, belongs in a different area. And then at the end of this section are the ones that actually do belong to the tourist commercial. That section with the, let's see. The 9.2.2 has to do not with tourist commercial, but with Rockland Road and Barton Road.
Right.
So it doesn't really belong in this section. It probably needs either.
This has been revised a little bit. If you still want to have a section on that Rockland Road, Barton Road area, we can certainly have a policy on that with a different objective.
Okay.
So if you read this, it's been generic. We've taken out the reference to Rockland and Barton Road, and we're talking about arterials, which Barton and Rockland are arterials.
Well, I worked from the copy of things that we got on Wednesday or Thursday. So that's why I'm a little puzzled now, because things are changed since then, and that's all we were given to work with. I would like to see the section that referred to Poppy Ridge and the subdivision. I would like to see that maybe switched around a little bit and applied to these southwest corner where the school and the R1 subdivision are, because I think those are still concerns. The ones that were put in for Poppy Ridge are still good concepts that we would want to help preserve the rural corridor there. So I don't like to lose that.
Okay, we can certainly have an area for that. So, Mark, maybe if we create move 9.2.2 out so that it has its own objective for the Rockland Barton Road area.
How would it read different than what this is?
It's just removing it from sort of that tourist destination objective, which it's under.
Okay.
And unstrike it or reverse the striking.
So then this would only apply. Is that the intent?
Yeah, I think that's fair, because if we look at 9.2.5, we talk about a buffer. So
Okay.
it's a little repetitive of that.
Mm-hmm. Happened. Oh, sorry about that.
The section that referred to Poppy Ridge was 9.2.2. So
Right.
that's the one I would like revised. It wouldn't take much revision, just a tiny bit, like to tell where it is instead of the Poppy Ridge location. And also please, it was fixed once, but setback needs to get fixed to 2 words again.
That is 2 words.
It's 2 words.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I only have the copy that I printed on Thursday after we got it Wednesday afternoon. And so I don't have any of your corrections that you've done since then.
Yep, we did all the corrections that you sent last meeting in here. So you'll see that as track changes.
Okay.
As documents in here.
All right.
So
Now,
we're back to tourist commercial then?
Yes. Mhm.
yes. And we're 9.2.3.
And these don't really look changed from the ones that you had, I don't think.
It's just a few phrases struck.
And we'll move on then. Is everybody okay? 9.2.4. So that whole section, is everybody okay with, or?
And the 2.7 are the same things that were in paragraph form before, and now they're basically in a list form, correct?
Yes, yeah. It's a little easier to track each one.
I think that the biggest challenge I see needing to update, looking at the original general plan for that area, I mean, they were specifically talking about Turtle Island, which I know, you warned us you shouldn't be doing a general plan for a specific project. And so, it talks about like integrating all of those different sites. But now we see the problem that if you don't have that overall vision, I mean, and without the integration of all of those different sites, it's going to be problematic. And so how do we then, clean this up here so that it's not, again, with the vision of a specific project, but the appropriate land use descriptions, I guess, for the policies or,
I think what you need to do as a committee is let us know what you think that should be, and then we can draft the text. So if you could just verbalize, doesn't mean you have to write the language especially, but verbalize what you anticipate for that area, and do any of these things not work for that area, and then we modify that.
Well, and again, I think that it's already been referred to, but the project that is going in that came to the Planning Commission last week was an eye-opener, because you saw that anything west of Betty Lane, they're not able to accommodate a secondary access. The only access is Brace Road.
Correct.
And then that is, inconsistent with some of these policies here about trying to avoid residential areas. And so I know that Jean had also shared concerns about that previously, that if you're not able to have that access road, it's not fair to any business owner who wants to come in and then does not have the appropriate circulation access. I also don't think it's fair to the town if we're creating an increase of volume on those roads that, really aren't in the best of shape to begin with.
And then I remember talking about that though, right, Bonnie? We had a couple meetings ago, and then Christy, can you remind the committee what happened with that access?
Yeah, we had talked about the access issue and how those properties that are past the Turtle Island area don't have that access to Horseshoe Bar Road. So there was discussion about how there is no concept for a frontage road that runs along there. There's no interest that was expressed from the landowners to have a frontage road running across the side, essentially the back end of those properties that are abutting the freeway. So there is an issue with that language, and Brace Road becomes the only option for those parcels that are further west.
I mean, I personally think that's hugely problematic, because you do have you've got the bridge that was put in 1993. You have, even in our old general plan, Brace Road identified as not being in the best of conditions. I don't think that anything has been done to improve it since then. So I think, trying to continue to, I guess, promote policies for commercial use west of Brace that won't have a secondary access just doesn't make sense to me.
So you're really talking about changing the land use designation in order to do that, because the land use designation trumps all other policies. So in the case of those parcels with only access on Brace Road, even though there's a policy saying you have to use Horseshoe Bar Road, because the land use is tourist commercial, you cannot deny that use. The only access is Brace Road. Therefore, the land use designation tourist commercial trumps those other policies, and access is allowed on Brace Road.
Right.
So you would have to change the land use designation in order to do that.
Well, given that the land use designation was changed specifically for Turtle Island, and that never happened, it makes sense to me to revert it back to the original designation, as long as the residents are in agreement and that's what they want.
Right, and so that is something that this committee already acted on, and the Turtle Island Committee already acted on, so it goes to the Planning Commission. I think, you know, when it comes to the Planning Commission, we need to have that discussion. So the question is, do these policies still work?
Well, and so then, I mean, then that's an issue, because if you have, you know, part of it commercial for right off of Horseshoe Bar, but then if indeed it does go back to residential, it really changes the policies, because you've got two different objectives.
You're absolutely right.
So what do we do?
Well, sorry. So what if, I guess what Bonnie's referencing is that the reason this isn't worked out is because Turtle Island hasn't come to fruition. But what if Turtle Island does come to fruition? Then we've changed the land use designation for something that hasn't happened, but we're not planning for the future. Is that what I'm hearing?
What you're hearing is that in the future that possibly those uses along Brace Road would be residential, and that you wouldn't have that connection to the Turtle Island commercial development that was anticipated under the commercial tourist designation when it was done 20 years ago. So you're changing what would happen in those areas.
I think what was most eye-opening for me is, again, it was only changed for Turtle Island. That was 20 years ago. That never came to fruition. When you drive out there, it's primarily residential. The only commercial was actually already existing prior to, with the exception of, I think, Tiny Tots. But the preschool actually went in under residential estates. The swimming pool, a church, those aren't actually TD. Those are actually residential, I believe. But everything else is residential out there. There has been no other commercial proposal other than the one that just came in.
This is Sean. There really isn't a way for a road to connect from Horseshoe Bar to Brace. If you look at, you know, the way that Secret Ravine runs through there, all the oak trees, the only way to connect from Horseshoe Bar to Brace would be to connect to like Betty Lane or something. And we're obviously not going to be able to do that for commercial traffic, and we wouldn't really ever recommend that. There's not enough room to do a frontage road along 80 and make that a viable connection either, because of the way that the roads are laid out already in the existing neighborhood. So I think that Bonnie's point is a good point, that, you know, if the properties that are on that triangle, right, Betty Lane over, if the policy remains that anything in CT zoning or not CT zoning, that is, it's TC, right?
Land use.
Yeah, and that land use designation needs to access off of Brace. That's basically depriving anybody in that corner, the whole thing from Betty Lane over to the bridge, property rights, because nobody would ever be able to build anything there. And so I think the policy needs to be addressed, because obviously that doesn't work. And maybe it's as simple as saying, commercial properties that are developed in that area from Betty Lane East need to access from Horseshoe Bar Road, because there's only two big parcels, right? And the bottom one is mostly Secret Ravine anyway. It's a bunch of oak trees, looking at Google Maps. So maybe that's just an easy way to fix it. And then this land use designation change that the residents are requesting, it's a separate issue that I think we need to address. But I would hate for the town to keep a policy in place that's going to open us up to potential litigation and, you know, accusations of taking people's property rights and et cetera, because there's no way to connect that in the first place. I don't know. I wasn't here when Turtle Island was proposed, obviously, but I'm not sure why we would have rezoned that whole swath from Betty Lane over when it wasn't owned. It's owned by they're all a bunch of different parcels. It kind of just doesn't make any sense to me.
Christy, but we did talk about this already. Can you please clarify?
Yeah. So when the subcommittee met, that language about the access only coming from Horseshoe Bar Road was struck. It might still be in the code, in the zoning, if there's something related to that could possibly still be, but we're only talking about the general plan. So that has been struck from these policies. We're not talking about only connecting from Horseshoe Bar anymore. We talk about concentrating commercial uses near Horseshoe Bar Road interchange, and then having less intensive uses further down Brace, but that's not the same thing as access only from Horseshoe Bar Road.
And honestly, I know that a lot of you have heard me kind of, repeat over and over that I really needed more public input to be able to help us guide how we're going to make these recommendations. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, all of the efforts that have been made really haven't reached the community. With this project, they are aware. And so we did get quite a large response from the community, and just even driving down that road, you can see why. It is fairly residential. It's primarily residential, and it's fairly rural feeling. And so I can certainly understand the concerns and why that was put into the original general plan about really trying to be sensitive to the impacts on the residential areas. I actually think we need to go back and change that and keep that in.
I think one of the things that happened is that in the current general plan, they're not supposed to have commercial fronting directly onto Brace. And I don't remember when that happened, that the lawyer said we can't do that. We have to allow commercial. If it's going to be zoned for commercial, we have to allow that access. And I guess I assumed the people along there would be told that, but they weren't. So that's why I think they were shocked, because they were under the impression their properties were basically protected from commercial fronting on Brace, but they didn't know that had been changed and was no longer valid from the general plan. So they lost that protection. I think that's one of the reasons it came as a horrible shock to the ones that came to the meeting on Tuesday night. And we I guess one of the, I agree that I think probably it needs to go back and find out who all wants to do that, but it's going to come to the Planning Commission. I don't know, do we even look at policies in anticipation of that, or do we leave it as is and then somebody goes back and changes the policy? What do we do in a situation like this when we think there might be something coming forth, but we don't have a good handle on it at this point?
What you do is you look at these policies to see if they make sense within the current general plan, and should the Planning Commission come to a conclusion of modifying the land uses, and for consistency, we will go back and revisit these policies. But at this point in time, you need to make your recommendations based on the existing general plan.
And while you're thinking about that, Jean, Miguel had a public comment, and it was written in the chat. And Miguel, you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
When the Turtle Island project was proposed and the tourist commercial zoning was to be placed upon that land, the people that were on the end of that property, I guess past Betty, the ones we're talking about now, they wanted to participate in that commercial zoning so that their land would be more valuable. At that time, one of the conditions was that there would be some kind of access road down to their property that then would allow the development of their commercial property, and then they would be able to go out on that road to Horseshoe Bar. So it was kind of a two thing. You get your land zone commercial, and you would have to go through the Horseshoe Bar, the Turtle Island property to get access. There was never considered access onto Barton Road.
Brace.
A Brace, yes, thank you.
Well, and to your point, Jean, it seems like it might behoove us to pass on the CT zoning changes to this particular area of the general plan so that the planning commission can incorporate all those changes along with any land use changes that they need to make. It seems logical to me.
Yeah, so we can make a note that these should be reevaluated based on the land use for this area.
Does anybody object to that?
Well, I just want to be clear. So how would this impact potentially a project from Turtle Island? If we redo everything in this area, then how does that impact potentially what could be a project at Turtle Island?
So I think, Tim, what's happening is there's that small triangle there at the corner of Brace and the freeway.
Yeah.
And it's only the people that have that actually live on Martin and Betty and all the way that direction that we are now receiving land use changes. So it wouldn't be the entire CT zone or designation. It would just be that small triangle there.
Okay.
It would basically be Betty Lane from Betty Lane to the west.
Do you need to
Okay.
see a map? Or do you need to see a map?
I'm visualizing. I just don't want to. I don't want to hamstring the potential of something happening at Turtle Island by doing this. And so, if what I'm hearing you guys say that this won't limit that future development, then I'm fine with, moving forward here.
Okay, and I
Let
think
me,
Cheryl.
let me see, let me just test my understanding of what we're talking about here. The idea here would be that this piece here or this entire triangle here would go to a different.
Yes, from Betty Lane.
Okay, one of the things that we talked about at the subcommittee level was that this road is really not suited in its current configuration to any kind of heavy traffic in any way, shape, or form. And it's infeasible to think that you would have a large commercial development of any kind here with a single on and off ramp. So there's really no connectivity. So if we take away the connectivity to come down to Brace Road, that is going to seriously curtail your ability to develop this area here. Just pointing out.
You could punch a road, where Horseshoe Bar goes. You could just punch a road through the Turtle Island development to connect there.
Right.
You'd have to draw a connector in between Horseshoe Bar, where your hand is right there, all the way down to Brace and Betty. I mean, that would. I'm not trying to engineer a project here. I'm just saying that's how you would get access to that project without having to go through Horseshoe Bar to Brace.
I agree with you. My understanding is that's what was being tried to be prevented here right now.
Yes, but all we are saying is right now from Betty East, I guess, or West, to the freeway, Betty Southwest, all those parcels there, most of them are residential right now. And according to the general plan, the old general plan, you can only access those parcels if you have a commercial business on Horseshoe Bar Road. So that creates a huge problem, and that's what the lawyer said that is something that is a little bit illogical for those particular parcels there. I don't believe that there's anything in the circulation element that I'm aware of that says they want to punch a road from Horseshoe Bar Road along Betty Lane to hit Brace Road. I don't believe that's in the circulation element.
It's not.
Okay, so that is not something that is being thought of.
And honestly, if a development went in there, whether it's commercial, whatever, goes into that top part, fire's going to make them have a secondary access no matter what. So, that the idea of this, what we're talking about now, negatively impacting the ability for that property to develop, I don't think it does that at all. because they're going to have to put another road to connect through anyway. And we know that we're not going to let them connect through Betty Lane because of the small residential uses there. So it would have to be farther over no matter what.
Do we know what circulation recommended for this area? Or
I don't think it recommended
Christy, you
anything.
said there was nothing for this
Because
area?
it's all project specific right now.
Yeah. It would only be related to upkeep of Horseshoe Bar Road or Brace, that type of thing. There's no plan for a new road going through there.
So Sean, if you believe that by doing that, it wouldn't limit a project to go into Turtle Island, then I'm fine. I would, yeah, I'm fine with that.
And Cheryl,
I just want to make sure that everybody just keeps on their mind that the importance of Turtle Island has in the history there, since the town incorporated, that has always been meant to be a commercially developed area that the town could rely on for tax revenue. And, to this day, it hasn't happened, but it's a very valuable part of town. And we don't want to limit that because it is incredibly important for the sustainability of the town. Let's keep all of that in mind. Thank you.
And I agree that the commercial aspect of that is critically important. Just a minor historical correction: that was RE at the time that the town incorporated, and it was not until later, and there was an initiative to make that the tourist commercial, and that was passed by a 2/3 majority in our town, which was, that's a pretty heavy vote on that. And that's when it got turned into the tourist rather than residential estate. But I think that is critically important to keep that designation. But I think we do need to let the people who are being impacted in ways that they didn't anticipate bring their case forward to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Jean. Cheryl, you can unmute.
Okay, one of the things that I heard Miguel say is Miguel said that those property owners there agreed to the CT zoning based on the fact that there would be a road provided through them to Horseshoe Bar Road. So basically it was conditional. Their agreement was conditioned on something, that they were going to be provided a way out of there. And my understanding is that property is landlocked. So they were going to provide them a way to Horseshoe Bar Road, which is a condition of agreeing to rezoning.
Well, those properties front on Brace, so they're
Not
not
on Brace.
landlocked.
I'm talking about over on the CT at the end of Betty Lane, Martin, in those areas. What Miguel said was they were going to be, and he was there, and I think it was around the year 2000. They were given the option to getting a road out of there when the whole thing with Turtle Island came down to Horseshoe Bar Road, but that never happened, and that was one of the conditions of agreement.
Thank you, Cheryl. I don't know, Miguel, if you have any light you can put on that, or Jean.
I think that's essentially true, that they were expecting to be, to be part of getting more value from going commercial, but understanding that it was going to be access from Horseshoe Bar.
Yep.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Miguel. All right. Does anybody then on the committee disagree that we'll go ahead and we won't make any changes to this particular area for the CT land use designation, and we will pass it on to the Planning Commission so that they can make a better
Comprehensive.
better cohesive decision about this once they hear from all the people that live in that area.
Can we make a note, though, about the circulation challenges? Just because I know, we're here and we've been working through this, but, most of them haven't been. So it just would be helpful for them to be aware that that's kind of why we're passing it forward, because there's a huge circulation issue.
Can we put a note that the committee concurs that this area should be reevaluated?
We should.
Yeah, Mark, you could put that note that this area should be reevaluated and that circulation is a hindrance to the development of the area.
Or east of.
Yeah, east of
Yeah.
Betty Lane. Yeah. The area,
That this area
is it
should
east or
be-
south? It's,
West.
yeah, Betty Lane to the west, you're right. Yeah, with the freeway going through it and angle it.
And I don't know about that next big piece that's between Betty Lane and the creek and the RE. I don't know what, it looks like one big chunk, so just for the sake of Brace Road and circulation, we might need to look at that. I don't know. Usually you want to keep a parcel all in one zoning, so that could be problematic there.
When it goes to the commission, we'll look at the land use and we'll look at the ownership as we discuss that.
Yeah, Miguel, you had something in the chat? Did you
Yes.
see some, what was that?
Could you come back down a little bit on the screen? It's for significant, in policy 119.23, it says the creation of a destination or significant stopovers for travelers. What I'm wondering is, what do you mean by significant? That seems to mean that they could stay there for a long period of time.
Thank you.
I read that as a destination is someplace that you're going specifically to be there, but a stopover means that you want it to be something that's noticeable for them to stop, but you're not expecting them to decide that that's where they're going to end up. But it's more than just pulling off the highway to go to McDonald's or something.
And we have another public comment that's in the chat. Dottie, did you want to unmute?
Thank you. I just wanted to get back to Miguel. This temporary housing or temporary place where they're going to be able to stop and maybe spend the night is also proposed for up to 2 years. So someone could potentially move into that place for 2 years. Just wanted everyone to understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that land use subcommittee did discuss, like opportunities for hotels. That was something that, especially, I don't remember if it was Roger who, gave us information about how much revenue can be generated from a hotel versus just from general sales. And so, we were very supportive of that.
Maybe we should add though something in the text where we should be reevaluated based on land use areas, and also maybe relook at zoning and.
Well, the zoning will change after you adopt the general plan update. That's, you
Right.
have to do that. So
Yes.
once the land use plan is adopted with the land use designations, then we have to update the zoning code to be consistent
Right.
with the land use plan.
But I
So-
know we've been making notes on other
We have,
areas,
right.
and I think this is an area of significant concern for that.
Right.
If bearing whatever happens at the planning commission.
Okay.
All right, committee, are we ready then to move on?
Yes, might as well.
Okay.
So we're now looking at the land use, or are we looking at still at those policies?
think there were two more policies.
Oh,
that we
two more
did.
policies to see if they-
9.2.8 and 0.9.
Okay. So is
So
there
those
any,
will all go to the planning commission, correct? That's all CT zoning.
everything
CT
under
land
that
use.
objective would, yes.
Right.
Enough.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is the goal that deals with the downtown, and we have objectives, and you see here.
Should I ask for public comment? Yes. Is it, do you have any public comment?
Hold on here, Mark.
Okay. Just let me know when you do, okay?
All right, there was just a question if we should have public comment. The public didn't want to speak at this point in time, so we'll continue discussion.
All right, so LU 10, which is the commercial or downtown area.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we have the goal here, and we have an objective. Then we talked about design standards. And so here you have what we have here.
I gotta say, 10.14, that just seems like, I mean, I'm not against agricultural heritage, but it just seems like, I don't know what that means. Visually integrate into the agricultural heritage of Loomis. It just, if I was designing a project, I would say, okay, let's like do murals and that kind of stuff. But what does that even mean? Like specifically, it just seems like a very general requirement. And then if you're trying to, build a project, it's like, I got to follow that policy. What does that mean? Who came
The
up
policy, okay, so if you take a look in these implementation measures, it's recommended that that the town adopt design standards. And so this policy would allow design standards that would give you the detail that you're asking for, Tim. So the general plan doesn't give that detail, but the design standards will. Okay. And that's where it would occur.
And
Okay.
Tim, just to be clear, these came from the subcommittee for the business corridor. I don't know if you recall.
Right. Shall visually integrate. Okay, so I guess we'd have to look at the design standards. So,
Right, we're strongly recommending design standards, not only for things like the downtown, but given some of the housing laws that have been passed by the state, you need design standards for multifamily housing, or it's possible that they could be built without any review. So we definitely need design standards in the town.
Oh, Randy,
I have a question.
go ahead, Randy.
Right, are the design standards the same as the design guidelines?
No, you have so overall, we're also looking at the terminology of creating a development code, and the development code would include the zoning. It would include your street standards. It would include design standards. So anything to do with development in the town would be under the development code, and the design standards are a separate document from the zoning code.
thank you for pointing that out.
Randy, this is Sean. The reason that they need to be design standards is because with SB 330, that falls back on objective standards in the general plan. And if they're not standards, then we can't fall back on them to make sure that we don't get, housing that's just a bunch of cinder blocks or whatever.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Tim on this one, though. The way this is worded, I don't know what that means. We could easily just say project design shall be consistent with the design standards. I don't know that all the design standards will necessarily have an architectural heritage of the town.
Yeah, we can't refer to the design standards in here because this is setting up the standard. So if anything,
If I remember right, it was important to the subcommittee because of our shed to shed, and the architectural heritage that it is also embracing. And I think the nod was basically to let commercial developers know that in our downtown area, we honor our heritage. And, when you're doing your design standards, try to, as best you can, I guess, incorporate that.
and there's a lot of discussion about what that that legacy is, and there was discussion of the Japanese history and the architecture that may not be here any longer. The architecture that is currently on Main Street or on Taylor Road, definitely the agricultural heritage of the sheds. So again, none of that was defined within this policy, but it was intended that when the town does development their design standards, that these would be discussions that would be held.
But it's not saying architectural or agricultural architectural heritage. It's the architectural heritage of Loomis. Like
That
that's
may be
what it's saying. It's not referencing any of like what that heritage is. It's just referencing architectural heritage other than, so it doesn't say agricultural heritage.
Well, there's more than agricultural heritage in the town of Loomis.
Right. But it's not even saying that. It's just saying the architectural heritage of Loomis. And I got to be candid. It's like, there's some things around that, you know, some of the architectural heritage of Loomis is not charming.
Could we add a phrase to the end saying as defined in the design standards?
Okay.
And then that would reference where they can look to find that.
I think that is what that would do is help people who's looking at this and you know, potentially bring a project forward to refer to the design standards. Right. I think that gets a lot closer to the intent of what that is trying to achieve. So I like that. Thank you, Christy.
Sure.
And there's a setting section too, right? That kind of describes the history so that
There is a setting section that describes the history, and part of that is the architectural history in the town. I believe that's in volume 2. Is that correct, Christy?
That would be 3.
Oh, volume 3, yeah.
And I don't even remember what document it was, but when I first became a planning commissioner, there was a document that we were given that had a whole study of the downtown architecture. So that probably can be found sometime and looked at again, because it's more than fruit sheds. There are a number of other kind of architecture that are our cultural heritage here.
Yeah,
And
I guess I'd say that like some of it's charming and some of it's not. So it's like how do you reference what is the heritage that you want to achieve and don't want to achieve. So I think that's my point. Sorry.
No, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jean. We have Miguel's hand up.
Thank you. One of the things here, let me find it. It's policy 11.13.3. Encourage the creation of community and civic center in the vicinity of the town library. Well, there's a project proposed there right now that doesn't have adequate land for these these things. So why have a policy when right now the way it's going to be developed, it wouldn't be possible to do that.
Thank you. Miguel, you want to take that?
Yeah, at this point in time, that project is in its pre-application form. We haven't reviewed the project, and the project will be reviewed against these goals. So we have to see what happens as we go through the review of the project. So that's not a foregone conclusion.
I also thought that had to deal with some property right behind the library and in the area that isn't part of that project.
Right. I think you're right, Mark.
That's correct.
Okay, any changes to this section?
Looks like we're okay.
Sorry, are we at 11?
Yes, right here. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. The library is there, like Christy said.
All right. Well, LU 12. And then objective 12.2, this is referring to the old BP land designation. So
correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is how and I think this committee flushed most of this out.
Yes, we did.
But now it's kind of put back under correct objective.
Correct.
So these objectives and policies were modified to reflect residential development rather than the business development. So these were policies in the general plan. They've been modified to reflect the residential.
Mhm.
So my question on the LU 12 is that it seems to imply more than residential, and then the section describes basically residential because these are not places primarily to work and shop.
Christy, can you
Yeah.
answer that, please?
Yeah.
Or
there-
even play.
We'll have a little bit of reorganizing these policies and objectives. This one will join the others that above regarding Turtle Island and the Rayleigh's area, et cetera. So this will be another one of those specific areas that are being addressed, and those will go under a different goal. So it's going to get rearranged into the appropriate goal.
Okay, so this will get a new goal rewritten for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason it ended up here was because we do have live.
Right.
There is one of the options, but yes.
Well, I remember one of the subcommittees played with that and added something to it, and it sounded nice. It just doesn't fit exactly here right now.
No, this is just your traditional residential. There's nothing special about that site once the designation's changed, other than the rail, of course.
So I sent in a number of comments on this. If this is going to be, we're proposing RE, 2.3 acre minimum subdivision, right?
Yes.
And looking at that particular parcel, I don't know that they are going to get 2 points of access to public streets. And that has not been our practice, our requirement in Loomis. And I cited Hunter Oaks and Hunter Crossing, which actually have a connection between the two, which is an emergency only. Brace Ranch Estates only has one entrance. Rachel Lane, Legacy Lane subdivision, The Grove, Poppy Ridge 1, Poppy Ridge 2, which didn't get developed but did get approved. St. Francis Woods in Montclair. We have not been requiring that, and I don't see that it's going to be very easy to get two accesses, and with 2.3 acre zoning, it's not going to be a very densely populated area. I suggest that we modify this or delete it. If we modify it, just say that it should have an emergency access if possible. But I think it's impractical in that particular place to expect that they're going to have two main street outlets, and they're not going to have that many. How many acres is this? How many 2.3 acre zoning are going to get?
It's 30 acres. So,
And typically you take off a quarter, 20% of that for
well, and
infrastructure.
you're right, Jean, because I think the owner is allowing access to Sierra College only because he owns the property to the east of that. And so you're right, this particular area would only be able to be accessed from that point.
I don't want to die in this. I don't want to die in this anthill, but we're in an environment where things like wildfire and evacuations are very real, and many parts of the state are being mandated to do this by their fire marshal. So we can take it out here certainly, but don't be surprised if it becomes a requirement. 2 points of ingress and egress is pretty much the norm where we live, and so but it doesn't need to be here. It can be elsewhere. And it can be taken out of here entirely.
Well, if it's taken out.
Also 2 points of egress could mean an EVA. So we have used that on other projects. So 1 point and then an EVA. So that I think is possible.
And if we don't do it here, it would come up in any conditions of approval anyway, I presume.
Yeah. Or design standards or any other kind of development standards that come with that.
Fire will typically require 2 points, depending on how many units there are. But if it's over like 5 or so, they're going to require 2 points of access. One of them can be an EVA, though. That doesn't need to be an actual road.
And that was my suggestion, that if we modified it, if we have to put it, I would put that EVA then.
Anders, can you wordsmith that for us?
Let's see here.
Either that or let it be into the conditions of approval, because the fire department's going to have to approve everything there anyway.
So Mark, maybe what we do is provide at least 2 points of access and just period. Yep. I think that would solve that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right. You're
Yeah, I've got it in a different mode. So where did it go? Okay.
I'm also objecting to this variation in parcel size. We don't usually do that. And the only reason I think we did it with the Grove is because some of those, part of that subdivision is butting up against RA. And so larger lots were on the outside and with smaller ones on the inside, but even that variation wasn't all that much. And I don't see the need for this here. If we say 2.3, that's generally what we mean.
the reason it's here is because you have a railroad there, and our suggestion is you have large lots to help buffer the rest of the lots. And so that's the reason for this recommendation, is a buffering from the railroad. We're meaning larger than 2.3 that can be backed away, and then you might have smaller parcels in the remainder to make up that difference.
But the overall density of the total project stays according to what's allowed, right?
That is correct.
So it's sort of...
It's a clustering concept.
Exactly what I was just going to say.
Specific to this site because of the railroad.
Right. And there are policies that allow for clustering of projects to avoid...
Correct.
Habitat or whatever, right?
I would rather let them propose clustering if they want it. And our clustering policy currently is not for this reason, it's for natural features to protect the areas that need protection for natural resources kind of situations.
Committee's choice if you want to have it standard 2.3 or if you want to suggest the varying sizes.
What if we said something about that it can't increase the density?
I thought it already said that, but
I think it did, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maintaining densities allowed by the land use designation. That's the first line.
I think too, like, to remember that a lot of these policies are being written under the lens of objective standards that need to be in the general plan, right? I mean, if we leave it up to and not say that you can, well, basically cluster if you're next to the railroad, if it's not specifically called out as an objective standard in the general plan, then that causes a little bit of problems if we have a development that comes forward with that, that kind of a situation. So for what it's worth, I think that the more specificity we can give on some of this stuff like that, the better off we'll probably be.
2.3 is pretty generous size already as far as from the railroad. I mean, you've easily got enough room on a 2.3 acre parcel, unless they scrounge it up right close to the railroad, to have a minimum of 100 feet. I mean, I don't know if you guys have looked at a 2.3 acre subdivision. Jan would know because it's right across the street from our Indian Creek. Those are pretty good sized lots.
So what's the will of the committee? Do we take it in, leave it out?
Cheryl's hand was up, now it's down.
Maybe just poll the committee, see what they want to do.
All right. Tim, what's your opinion? Tim Underko.
I would just say keep it out.
And Jean, I know is to keep it out. What about you, Bonnie?
I don't know, since it's vacant land right now, and I would agree with Sean that we really want to have as much specificity so that when a developer comes, we've kind of described what it is that we're looking for. I would want to avoid having, more homes right there by the railroad. I would prefer that it being less. So I don't know. I think I would be inclined to leave it in.
And then what about Randy?
You're talking about 12.2.2?
Correct.
Okay. Then the railroad right-of-way technically is 200 feet from the center line of the rail. Then you add an additional 100 feet from that. That's 300 feet from the middle of the track. I think that's pretty significant amount of space. And the developer is going to still have to sell it to those that want to buy parcels. I'm comfortable leaving that as the way it is.
Oh, that's a good point, Randy. So it isn't exactly 100 feet, right? It would be additional
It'd be a
right away
total
on
of
the,
300.
Which kind of starts carving up your
yeah.
available lot size.
So I am inclined to keep it in. Personally, I think that it would be nice to have some flexibility there just because of that railroad.
So is that 4 in?
So that
After
would
hearing
be-
Randy's comments, I'm agreeable to his position. I think those are good points that I just had not considered previously.
Okay.
I'm glad we're having these discussions because sometimes you don't think of these things until someone brings them up. So thank you.
Any public comment? Okay, it looks like it's going to stay in for now.
Okay.
Miguel.
Yes, if you will look at the right-of-way where Webb goes across railroad tracks, you'll see that there's the railroad tracks and then there's, I don't know, 100 or 200 foot easement or right-of-way, you'll find it there. Oops. Keep going. Along the side of the track. So to say, right there, it's all of that is SP or Union Pacific easement, and they have their pipeline under that. And to make a property owner set back another 100 feet from that, from their easement, it doesn't make any logical sense. You're already, as pointed out, a couple 100 feet from the railroad tracks with the Union Pacific easement. And so I would recommend not requiring when you split those or develop those lots that you have to go back an additional 100 feet from your property line. That would be a tremendous amount of distance for no particular reason. Thanks.
I keep going back and forth. Those are good points. Also, it's like you don't want to hamstring a project. If they want to, that's a good point. Also, I would just let a developer or a property owner make that determination within some boundaries.
What about just removing that last sentence that the residential uses shall be set back a minimum of 100 feet? And keep
I like
the rest
that.
of it.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Although for the town, again, I mean, this is a vacant parcel right now. We don't have any, project that's being proposed. What about pedestrian pathways? Where does staff imagine putting those? Because I mean, we want to try to create other ways that people can move around and circulate in the town.
And as I recall, that is in there as one of the policies, is pedestrian pathways would be created.
That's coming up.
Yep.
That's coming up in
But then would it-
12.25.
Would it be along the railroad, like
I
paralleling it, or?
Don't know.
I mean, I guess this is where it's-
Probably. I mean, because otherwise you're just carving into people's, you don't want to put it through the middle of it and have people have houses on both sides. So it makes sense to do it along the right of way for sure on the back side of the properties. So if you're requiring them to be 100 feet from the railroad right of way, plus putting in an easement basically for a pathway, that's another like 120 feet or whatever. I think if you remove that 100 feet requirement, and then in conditions of approval, say that you have to put a pedestrian pathway, you don't lose as much depth of the lot. And then clustering it, so you've got the larger lots closer up to the railroad tracks, smaller ones with a little bit, smaller lots, but keeping the density the same. That makes sense to me. That's a good point from Miguel.
I'm thinking of like potentially where the mill is, and what if someone came in and wanted to do like mixed use on the street frontage there, residential on the top and retail on the bottom. That might be getting pretty close to 300 feet.
There's no commercial here.
No, this is specific to
I'm
the
sorry.
triangle site.
Okay, so but even though it's close to the railroad track, it wouldn't apply because it is residential. I mean, a mixed use project could be residential.
I think
use.
the circulation would prohibit, because they're really, right now, we've kind of identified that it would be difficult to get 2 points of access in and out, right?
Right.
So I think the circulation itself would limit that.
So as modified, it just takes out the last sentence.
Please.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Is that good, Randy?
I'm looking at the land use map, and this triangle has on its, I guess, north side, large RR parcels. And on the west side, 2.3 acre zoning, fairly large parcels. And now that doesn't mean they couldn't be split sometime, but I think we should want to keep in character with what's next door, and not try to manage the parcel sizes here. I think this is an odd configuration, a triangle, and it's going to have to come in off of Tripp's other parcel that goes to Bankhead and get a road in there circulating around to these parcels. I think they've got enough to think about without us imposing anything else other than the zoning.
So what are you suggesting, Jean?
Well, I agree to take out that we should take out the 100 feet. I guess I'm not comfortable with changing the zoning to make it that flexible. I'm just not. It sounds like everybody else is, but we start doing that and it feels like a slippery slope, kind of.
Okay, thank you, Jean. And I think at this point, it's the committee's, most of the committee is okay with taking that out.
The 100 feet.
Just the 100 feet, yeah.
Right, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have this policy.
If somebody wanted to come in and make something smaller than RR, they could do that. Is that correct? They could make them as small as they want, as long as as long as they don't do more than the maximum of what you could get with 2.3. They can put as small as they want. Is that correct?
They can't go below the minimum, the maximum density. They have to stay within the density. So if it's 2.3 acre lots and it's a 30 lot or 30 acre subdivision or 30 acre parcel, that's, I don't know, let's just round and make it 15, right? To make it the math easier for my head.
13.
They could do, they can't have any less than that number. I'm sorry, they can't have any more than that number. But they could have some lots that are smaller up towards the back, some larger ones up towards the front.
But they
The
can
overall
have,
density stays the same.
as long as the overall density is okay, they can make some lots as small as they want. Is that correct?
So Jean, with the inclusionary housing ordinance though, I would want to give the developer more flexibility so that they could make smaller homes that would be in the affordable range because they're having to meet that requirement from the town now, as opposed to having them be the same size as, all of the others that would be at market rate.
My guess is for this area, they'll meet it through ADUs and not through building one or two other units. But I think we should move on.
Okay. So then LU 12.2.5 stays in there.
If you look at what a 2.3 acre subdivision looks like, and my example is Indian Creek across from the golf course. I don't know that they're going to need internal trails, because when you have basically an isolated kind of subdivision, people are going to walk on the rural roads. Now, if you wanted to just say any trails should connect with, the public trails, if there were some, I don't have a problem with that, but I don't know that they're going to build for that number of homes. Are they really going to have trails in addition to a very isolated rural road that people can easily walk on?
So let's remind ourselves where this is vis-a-vis your downtown.
But there's no way to get to it.
This is
Mark.
at
There's no way to get
ability
to it.
But if you have a trail that goes along the railroad, if you don't start the trails, you'll never get them. So you can certainly not have them as part of this project. You're not requiring them as part of a subdivision, but then you're never going to get them. This is a one and done thing. When this is subdivided, if you don't have it baked in, you're not going to go back and get them. The question is, do you want to start providing trails? And these don't have to be, class 3 trails or anything like that. These can be, just connectivity. And I would argue you already have a lot of that already informally done along the right of way, which is probably where it shouldn't be. But there's really no way to walk around. And I guess you could walk on the roadways, but we try to discourage people from doing that and give them other opportunities. That was the reason for that policy. But it's entirely up to the committee.
Okay, Mark, can you show them the Indian Creek subdivision so they'll see what I'm talking about?
Sure,
It's across from Indian Creek. We walk there all the time. It's a small subdivision on 2.3 acre zoning, which this would be.
So where am I going? I don't know where Indian Creek subdivision is.
Go down Barton Road to the golf course.
Okay, there's Brace.
Can you move that part?
Barton, down to the golf course.
You passed it.
Past it, up north,
Oh, going the other way?
Right, stop.
Indian
stop.
Creek, right there.
right
Okay.
there. It's across Barton Road, so go left. That's the subdivision she's talking about.
Okay.
Okay, so we walk there all the time. You can walk on the road. There's not that much traffic. It's a pleasant place to walk, but it doesn't need a trail in addition to it. Now, if if we want to have connectivity to any public trails, we can say that without requiring them to build a separate pedestrian trail.
So how do they get connectivity if they don't build it and if there's no trail when they do it? I fight these arguments with developers every single day, Gene. No policy, no trail. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, from staff's perspective, I think it's critical to start requiring those developers to build this stuff because the town's never going to be able to do it if we do it on our own. And
My question is, do they need a trail internally in that subdivision?
if they don't have a trail internally, then it won't ever get built. So if somebody wants to go from, Sierra College Boulevard and go for a nice walk with their kid or something and end up downtown, they won't be able to do that. There's no way to do that right now. But if there's a trail and something starts to get built, there's a way to at least cobble it together, hopefully. If there's no policy to support it, there's no way to do it.
The other thing is the Circulation Committee wants trails throughout the town. Parks and Recreation Committee wants trails throughout the town. This is really following through on the policies established by the other committees.
Jean, are you getting kind of tied up with the word internal imagining?
I am.
Yes,
I'm-
yes.
So am
Okay.
Internal, I think within the subdivision, I'm thinking
Right.
trails within the subdivision. I think what it means is trails that like connect, like in my own neighborhood, like Legacy Lane to Del Oro, right? Is that what they mean by internal trails?
The issue here is that it's within the subdivision because there is nothing else outside the subdivision. So, I mean, we could say trails and you get to the same spot.
Can we just say, instead of internal, say within the subdivision then?
Well, you have streets, you have public streets and public sidewalks that would.
Probably won't be any sidewalks in there.
Mark, if you just took out internal and just said, new subdivision shall provide trails with connection to pedestrian access, that's what the other goals and policies are in the circulation element and Parks and Recreation element, and reflected here again.
And
What's
is
a
it
trail though? Is a trail, I think of a trail as like an unimproved, like decomposed granite trail. Is it improved or is it not improved? What is a trail?
We don't have design standards for the trail. That will come in the design standard manual. So yes, a trail could be just dirt, or it could be DG or something else. So at this moment in time, the composition and structure of a trail is not defined.
Okay. Could it be, okay, so we'll have to go to the design standard. But can we, is a trail a public sidewalk?
It can be, and in fact, in many places it will be, but in this subdivision at 2.3 acres, the site, you're probably not going to get sidewalks. In fact, I'd be shocked if you got sidewalks on something
That's not in our, no, we don't require that in the 4.6 and 2.3. The roads are basically semi-rural roads.
Okay.
The developer would beg you to build the trail at that point just because of the cost differential.
Okay.
Cheryl, oh, sorry, Bonnie, go ahead.
Would it be appropriate to request that the trail connect to Sierra College Boulevard or not? Because is that getting too specific? Okay. All right.
Cheryl, go ahead. Go ahead and unmute, Cheryl.
Okay. In Roseville, by Ike School, they have a lot of trails that go through the residential areas. And that is a really nice addition. They also, in West Sacramento, in new developments, they have trails that go back through. And kids, a lot of use those to walk to school so they're not walking on roads. It's actually really, really nice. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Cheryl. So it looks like we are striking the word internal. Is the committee okay with the statement as it is, with the policy?
I am.
Sure.
Okay.
This has to deal with communication with the railroad to make sure that we're talking. It's really not much more beyond that.
No objections.
All right.
I guess it would depend on if they communicate back to us, which is rare.
Miguel has a comment.
Sure.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, it was just back on the trail issue. If you'll look on King Road from Humphrey down, when that 2.5 acre subdivision went in, there was a quote trail required, which is actually an asphalt path adjacent to the roadway. And I think that's the way it should be in this one, would be a path adjacent to the roadway, not through the property. So we already have it. As far as most of the ones in Roseville, being familiar and having done many of those were in wetlands where they ran the bike paths and all either along a creek or things of that nature. As far as I know, there's hardly any developed trails that run through a subdivision that aren't connected to open space, power line easements, or things of that nature. Thanks again.
Thank you. All right, so we are at 13.1. I don't see any issues from any of the committee members.
All right, good.
Move on to 14.
Yep.
Cool beans. All right, so this is the goal.
I'd like to just get the pulse of it. Everyone on potentially removing 14.1.1 gated residential communities.
Okay.
I personally have heard from people recently who have questioned that intention, and there are people out there that object to it, and I think it's time to have the conversation.
Okay.
Sean or Anders or Mary Beth, for gated communities, do those communities then need to maintain and keep up their roads?
Yes.
Because they're not public roads, they're not considered public roads then.
Right. And the other thing is the fire department is going to want a turnaround at the front of that gate so that if they don't go through the gate, they can turn around along with delivery vehicles or anything else. So I believe it's a 30-foot radius when you do that. Just recently in Placer County, we approved a gated community, and there's quite a distance set back in order to get that turnaround.
Thinking of the two subdivisions that we have is in, like I have like a St. Francis and is it Montclair? Or?
Montclair is not gated. That's a
Richmond.
public road in spite of their sign. They've been called on it many times with when Rick had to get after him. It is not a gated community.
Okay.
They just put a sign up and claim that.
I was corrected by Carol too. It was Ridge Park. So the two that we have, those have, especially St. Francis, that's the one that I was thinking of.
We only have one.
St. Francis?
Yes.
Okay. So that one does have plenty enough room. I mean, you know, if it's a gated community, then you're buying the road and taking care of your own road, which from the town's perspective, I don't know if that's not negative. I don't know how that would be. I don't know.
It comes down
I think
to,
this is more of like a policy issue of like, what do we want our community to be more than anything else?
So Bonnie, what do you think?
Well, I bought in a community because it was not gated. If it was gated, I actually would not have been interested in buying. That's just my own personal opinion. I know that some of my neighbors feel differently, but then that is a public road. It's not one that is privately maintained. I'm just wondering, what areas do we have, large enough parcels of where we would have gated communities other than, I guess, tiny, small little ones,
I don't think it's viable to convert the existing neighborhoods into, you know, private streets with gates. I mean, you know, picture Legacy Lane, for example. It would be really hard to turn back and create a private road there and all of a sudden privately maintain those roads and then have a fire, you know, turnaround in the front there. That would be quite an undertaking. But I think for newer projects is what I think people are thinking of. And it really does come down to, I think, in some parts, preference, personal preference, right?
Okay, how about you, Jean?
This was put in because of people not liking the effect of St. Francis Woods. I don't know if Loomis approved this very early in its time as a town, or whether this was inherited from the county. I don't know that. But I think it sets a whole different atmosphere to have gated communities. And I think we would have, even if they can manage the turnarounds and things, I think we would have every place that has enough. I think we would have it right and left. And from my perspective, we want to be a more free and open sense of community here. And if they want to buy in a gated community, they can find someplace else that doesn't mind doing that. But I don't think the Loomis people in general would want that. I'd support what it is.
Thank you, Jean. How about you, Randy?
Well, I agree with Jean. If you look at Montserrat there on Barton, that is despite all the litigation, potential litigation that occurred, that is a very successful project that has a very good feel to it, in my opinion. And I think that can be accomplished in other parts of Loomis. I would leave it as it is.
Thank you. And I guess I'm the last one on the committee to give my opinion. And I agree. I agree with Bonnie, Jean, and Randy, and I would really hate to see us requiring a gated community. I love the open feeling of being able to walk, through Montserrat, and I think we'd be missing out on great opportunity of a sense of neighborly and sense of open feeling. But I know we have some public comment. Cheryl, go ahead.
I think that's a very good rule to have, that we're not going to have gated communities. I didn't get it at first, but I really get it now after 20 or so years, why that isn't there. Because, you start blocking off and gating things, it gives a whole different feel. I think it's important to leave it that way and don't gate communities.
Thank you.
As far as the road maintenance anymore, whether it's a public or private, in a gated community or a public subdivision, we do require road maintenance agreements. Whatever kind of subdivision it is anymore, it does have to pay for their own road anyway. So that's not really significant matter one way or the other, I don't think.
All right. After polling the committee, it looks like that will stand. And what do you say about the rest of 14? Oh.
I guess my question is, with the multifamily residential shall not be permitted on arterial serving as entryways. So are we referring specifically to Taylor, Sierra College Boulevard?
Which one is that, Bonnie?
Well, my version's 14.1.3. I'm not sure if it's the same in there.
So that came out of the original general plan under residential.
Yeah. It's old policy 11.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and maybe you could define arterials again. I wasn't on the circulation, and so I know that there's some specific classifications for the type of roads.
Yeah, you have arterials, which are heavier duty roads, and then you have collectors that are essentially taking residential roads, and they're all funneling into a collector, which then funnels into an arterial, and then you have your residential streets.
So the arterial is more of a main road.
It's a
than the
main
collector.
road.
But if I recall too, the Brace is considered an arterial as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are 2-lane arterials and there's 4-lane arterials. So
Would
there's
it be-
some that are heavier than others.
Would it be appropriate to, instead of just saying shall not be permitted on arterials, maybe shall not be permitted on 2-lane arterials? And the reason I say that is because, again, you know, the biggest complaint that we get from our residents is our roads. And I don't understand why we would want to limit our major roads from having more volume capacity from multifamily residential, when that to me makes the most sense, as opposed to putting them on smaller streets. Am I thinking about
You know,
this?
this may need to be reworded, because I think what it's talking about is driveways entering the arterials, that you don't want a bunch of driveways lining up on an arterial. So,
And what's odd is your apartment complex at Sierra Meadows is then on an arterial on Brace.
Correct.
So it's a strange policy as it's written.
What if we just follow Andy's thought there and just say drives?
yeah, I think that's really what the intent is.
Okay.
You don't want a bunch of driveways. You want some kind of a collector that takes those residential parcels out to the arterial.
And Dottie, go ahead.
Hi, my comment, thank you again for allowing me to speak. My comment is on 14.1.2, encouraging the enhancement, revitalization, and rehabilitation of residential areas. I live in Hunter Oaks, and our agreement with the town was a 50-year agreement for the landscaping on Bryce Road. Well, that landscaping has not been taken care of, and it's basically died pretty much most, if not all of it, along our street. And working with our HOA president, he's been trying to get to the town to talk about helping us do this revitalization. Is there going to be a way for residents to appeal to the town to get some support for this 14.1.2?
Sean?
Who's the president of the HOA? Is it Mike?
No, it's John
Okay, so
Brownlee.
have John send me an email and then we'll figure it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Appreciate the help.
I'm now reading through, if we're finished with that one, the one where we added driveways. It doesn't look to me like that was looking at driveways so much as it wanted. I mean, that can
Are
be
you
important.
coming up to bed, or are you coming up to shower?
Anyway, when it says unless substantial setbacks and landscaping are provided,
I have grief with this because I don't know what substantial means and I can't enforce that. I mean, I know what you're saying, Gene. You're saying this isn't about driveways. At this point, it's about visual. They don't want houses up on the arterial. And I understand you there. So we should probably talk about that. But the other thing is, this is not good
Let's
language.
get rid of that.
basically we're talking about aesthetics and not having apartment buildings right up against right up against residential development next door
Well,
without setbacks and landscaping.
Yeah, do you even need this? I mean, this almost looks like it should be two policies.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a mouthful in just one sentence there.
So I think this is a good standalone policy here.
Yeah.
And I think this would almost need to be its own.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
okay, except that still doesn't fit with, driveways don't fit with what
No.
they're trying to get at.
You're right. Ooh, what happened there? Yeah. Let's see. Let's do this.
While he's fixing that, it's getting close to 8, so why don't we finish up this policy LU 14 for the evening? So then we would just need to look at LU 14 1.4 for tonight.
Okay, so should not be permitted on arterials. Do you want to go to 2-lane arterials or arterials?
Just
I mean,
arterials. Just leave it arterials.
Okay. And then I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what they mean by substantial setbacks.
Just take substantial out.
I would, yeah, just
Strike substantial.
Okay. So we already require setbacks. I mean, if we really want to just punt on this, we could say setbacks and landscaping are provided consistent with the design guidelines.
There you go.
there you go.
Sounds good.
Okay. So 14.1.4. This is in the current general plan, of course.
I agree with that. Anybody disagree with that? And any public members? All right, so it looks like we are at a good stop.
On 14.1, should that be no rather than, oh, it's non, should be non-mixed use?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we are set again to meet tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And we will finish up these
All that's left.
rules and policies. And then we have to talk about, I think, site coverage on the glossary. And then we'll talk about the recommendations for the high density residential sites. Okay? So
and Mark, would you take a look at seeing if that the Poppy Ridge one, which was the Barton and Rockland Road, if that could be basically easily substituted to apply to the school and our R1 subdivision corner?
Yes, I'll take a look at that and talk it over with Christy and Andy, and we'll figure out something to get in there so you can look at that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
all right, everybody, thank you very, very much for your hard work, committee and experts and members of the public. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow night. We are adjourned.